Hello and welcome to an unexpected podcast. My name is Tim, and with me as always, we have Matt, Mick, and Devin. Unfortunately, Rainier couldn't be with us this week. On this week's episode, we're going to be going over a 650 point list and an 800 point list of Easterlings that Matt and Mick had wrote based on the last episode to kind of tell you how we would build a list, as well as an 800 mixed Khand and Easterling list that I have with me today. And then we're going to be going over two reviews of lists from Lothlorien and a Mordor Seige Bow list because unfortunately we left one out in the last episode. So we figured we'd give you twice the list review. So we'll move over to the Mordor Seige Bow list first, just because that one I'm really interested to hear people's opinions on. So I'll move that over to Mick.
The tournament winning list.
Yes, this is the one that wins.
All right, so this list comes from Avery Marjoram. Sorry if I just butchered your surname. So I wrote a 700-point Mordor list inspired by Tim and Evan in the Barad-dûr episode. The triple siege bow plus Black Numenorians. I would love your thoughts on it. I haven't played the Witch King on Felby, so I suspect his loadout could be changed. The numbers aren't quite right. The numbers aren't quite as high as they could be. My main thought is that the shield wall sits between siege engines, while the Witch King makes it harder to charge. He and Kardush cast with Gurits to get it all in one place and call marches and moves. I would love to hear your feedback. So the list itself is Warband 1 contains the Witch King of Angmar on the Felbeast with Crown of Morgul, 3 Might, 12 Will, and 2 Fate points. He's leading a Morannon Orc with a banner, shield, and spear, 8 Morannon Orcs with shields and spears, 8 Black Numenorians. Second Warband is Kardush, leading 1 Orc Warrior with shield and spear, 1 Orc Warrior with shield, and 2 Warg Riders with shields and throwing spears. Warband number 3 is Gurits, Master of Reserves. He's leading 1 Orc Warrior with shield and spear, 2 Warg Riders with shields and throwing spears. Then we have 3 identical warbands afterwards, which go Orc Siege Veteran and a Mordor Seige Bow. And this repeats 3 times. So in total, we have 700 points, 10 Might, out of which 3 are in the siege engines, 36 models. So the army is broken at 19.
That's gonna hurt.
So it's interesting.
You mean it's game changing? It's gonna
yeah,
change
I mean.
So I'm not even going to start with the siege floats.
Back in the day, I think when we were doing one of the dwarf episodes, I was suggesting having 3 dwarf ballistas in like a horde of dwarves. I didn't exactly have 3 orc siege bows in mind when I was saying that list. So,
you're glad they're here.
Exactly. Okay, so on the positives. Well, actually, first of all, it's interesting to note that there are 6 warbands here. Witch King is leading 1, Kardush and Gurits is leading a third one, and then the 3 separate warbands for the siege bows. So the rules actually for siege engines state that you have to have at least 1 hero of fortitude for every siege engine that you bring to the table. So this is why obviously we can't have 5 siege bows and just the Witch King, which would just completely break the game. On the positives in this case, I love the Witch King. He could do with more will points and potentially a third fate point. At 700 points, there's a lot of possible combat that he might be getting into. Black Numenorians, supported by Morannon Orcs with shield and spears, are pretty solid, especially with the banner. And then the other warbands, obviously Gurits is really good, and so is Kardush. Although Kardush is not maximized here fully because of Black Numenorians. If you're playing Kardush, it's possible that more orcs and less Black Numenorians might be a better choice. And then the 3 siege bows. Well, what do you guys think?
I mean, I guess so. Before we even get on the siege bows, because the siege bows are obviously a talking point here, but I think you did definitely hit on a couple points where Kardush is not maximized at all, and I kind of like, even with the siege bows or even without them, 36 models at 700 points, where like half your army is defense 4, I think, because he's got like 9 orcs on these siege bows, and I'm assuming he's gonna.
No, there's actually 6 orcs on the siege bows because it's each siege bow is 2 models, and then one of them becomes a siege veteran, right?
No, it's 3.
Or is it 3? Oh,
Yeah,
He's
okay.
got nine models there that plus then the other orcs sprinkled throughout.
A quarter of his army is crewing siege bows.
Yeah. And he's at 36 models. So he's trying to fit things that can't fit. So like the Witch King on Angmar and Felbase, yeah, I love it, but he can't fit that in this list because he's trying to get expensive troops in that warband while at the same time spamming siege weapons. So I think just overall what he's trying to do is fight. He's fighting his own list for like territory here. I mean, we can talk about the siege bows, and I definitely want to because that makes the list kind of interesting and fun to review. But I think there's some failings here already where like, so if you're going to have small numbers in your list, generally you want to be a majority elite or high defense or something that mitigates the damage or something of that nature. But he's got a largely fragile army at 36 models. And at 700 points, like, yeah, if we were talking about a 500 or 600 point list, possibly it would have been okay. But at 700 points, I mean, the average army, a basic army is going to be 39 models. Like, that's just starting, let alone anyone who might be flexing their list to jump for more models. Like, you're being outnumbered while not having the troops to fight the long game because the siege bows are not going to blow your opponent up at range. So that's my initial thoughts that are kind of worrying me.
Well, to stick with the positives, I am positive the siege bows are a bad idea. So let's talk about the siege bows a little bit. I mean, we've talked about them before. Let's talk about some of the problems. I mean, the obvious problem number 1 is they only hit on 5s, so they're just not going to hit that often. Mm-hmm. Problem number 2, and this is inherent in the non-area effect, non-volley fire siege weapons, is there's a lot of things you can do to counter or nullify those types of siege weapons. One being, as long as you keep your enemy's battle line between your troops and your enemy's siege weapons, they have a real problem shooting them. Because even if they have some like small keyhole shots where they can find to shoot at your guys with none of the own troops in the way, they scatter. And if you do manage to roll that 5 or a 6, and then you roll a 1 through 5 afterwards, you can scatter it to a guy within 3 inches that has 2 of your own folks between them and the target, in which case suddenly you're probably hitting your own guys and killing your own guys rather than your opponent's guys. That's problem number 2. Problem number 3 is there's an FAQ that's come out that now says you can scatter onto somebody who is not in line of sight of the siege weapon. So you can take a guy within 3 inches of the intended target and like stick him behind the corner of a house or behind a wall or something like that. And if your target gets hit, then you scatter onto that guy. Then you're not going to get killed. And not only that, if there are enemy guys that are in the way of that invulnerable guy, they might get hit. I think that's how it works.
Hold on. If you were to scatter onto someone who's behind a house, wouldn't the house just be in the way? So there's
the house is in the way, but
I mean, yeah.
But here's the thing: what if there are like 2 enemy troops that are in the way before you get to the house?
Well, then you roll in the way for the first one, then the second one, then the house. So
you don't roll in the way for the house if the guy can't be seen, right?
Well, I think you have to pick a legal target. So when you scatter,
they have changed that in the FAQ, and I will look that up.
You don't have to pick a legal target, so you just fling it into the house.
It just has to be a battlefield target within 3 inches, and if that can't be seen by the siege weapon, then that target can't be hit. You guys go on and chat about issues about this.
Yeah, all right.
I'm going to look that FAQ.
Sure, can.
I think Mick.
Well, no, sorry. I would have just imagined that the shot goes, and then it might just penetrate a wall and then still get through, or it won't
No,
penetrate the
because
wall. It won't
it's
get through.
like at that point you can't see the target, you can't hit it.
Yeah, but
I'm gonna look.
well,
You
at
guys
that
talk
point,
about other things. I'm gonna
the
look. I'm
shot
gonna
is
look
already
this up.
flying. The shot is already on its way. It
Yeah,
can
and it's in the way.
target.
It's in the way into a house. All right. Again, you guys talk about something else, and I'm gonna look this up.
So,
guys,
Nick, I think you did some
get out of this.
statistics on how often
Oh,
the
yes.
siege bows will hit. These siege bows, so 3 siege bows, how often will it hit, Mick? Break us down some stats.
So one siege bow hits 1/3 of the time, right, on a 5+. And then if you want to land it on your initial target, then it's 1 in 6. However, if you have a might point, then it's really 1 in 3 because a 5+ gets you that hit. So a single siege bow will hit the initial target once per 9 shots. So if, let's say, on your first turn you were to fire all 3 at your opponent's general, for example, and you were ensuring that you will only use the might point on your scatter roll to try to get that 5 into a 6, then I ran some maths earlier, and it came out to be just about 30% chances of actually hitting that general. So you're spending quite a lot of points to once every 3 turns maybe hit something that you're really trying to hit. And then even if you hit it, that general just takes a fate point and doesn't really care. And thing is, if you were using a catapult, for example, with all the rerolls and hitting on 4s, plus the might point, you pretty much have the same chance of hitting with just a single catapult. In fact, you might actually be slightly better off with a single catapult. Plus, you have the troll, and there is an area damage. So I'm just comparing how 3 siege bows are not even as good as a single catapult.
So the only standing that I can say for the siege bows over the catapult is the fact that it gives you 9 troops over a troll.
right.
I get it; it's a troll, but I'm saying, like, if you're trying to boost your numbers for any reason. Now, in this case, he's boosting his numbers on a list that's kind of small. So I think in the Barad-dûr episode, we were talking about doing that, but we were talking about it in the context, I believe, in a list that's already a horde list. So, like Sauron. But basically, yeah, you would already have like dozens and dozens of orcs all over the place. So your numbers should be looking more like they were 50, 55. And then I'm not talking about the fragility of the army. And then you're just weighting them down through numbers. And then the idea is like, okay, well, if I wanted to shoot at my opponent, they'd have to come to me because I have the siege bows. And then if they wanted to shoot back, well, I have a horde. So I really don't care about damage, but you really care like about being shot back. And so that's the inherent problem I see, is that the structure of the list, if you're going for 3 siege bows, in my opinion, I think you would have been far better off taking the Witch King, maybe reducing his roll completely down, and then just spamming out orcs and seeing if you could get to that 50, 55, even more number. Gurts is great because even though your siege bows don't scatter around, Gurts can keep your army kind of protecting the siege bows, in Maelstrom missions. But other than that, yeah, I think it's the Witch King's Warband that defeats this list, to be honest.
I mean, like, even if you were playing against high elves, high elf lists, which has a lot of really expensive models, will probably hit like 35, 36 models by itself. And all of those models are far more superior than yours.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you compare it to a high elf list, actually, a high elf list at 700 points is probably going to be 39. Usually that's what it is. It's always 39 because if you think about it, it's 3 warbands filled up with a hero of fortitude. Now, that was in the old game. That's how that math tended to work out. Now you have heroes of legend and all that. Like, they may even have a few more. So it's just people tend to take more expensive heroes now, which kind of brings it back to the 39 number often.
In fact, I just thought a 500-point ranger list is going to have 36 models.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's pretty screwed against rangers.
yeah, but like, I mean, in a sense, a 500-point ranger list might even have a pretty good chance against the 700-point list.
Yeah. I think the list is trying to say, Avery, I'm not, obviously you heard Nick's statistics and you've heard Matt's reasons for why these things suck. But if you're really, really intent on bringing 3 siege bows just for the lulls, then I would recommend at least give yourself a game and break the Witch King's Warband into a horde and distribute that across the existing warbands that you already have.
How many points is this Witch King?
So I think I added it up
120,
correctly. I think it's 185, if I'm correct.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I think
I think you could drop them down to a horse instead of the Fell Beast.
I would drop it even further than that. I don't even know if I'd take the Witch King in this list.
Well, see, that's what I had a thought process of. Maybe you do like someone like the Undying on horse kind of a thing, or maybe you take like the Shadow Lord or something along that lines for 130. Save 50 points there. And then I wanted to get your guys' opinion on this. Maybe you drop the Moranians down to regular orcs with spear, and then you get, I believe, 24 points. If you drop the Moranian with banners, well, it's 27 extra points. So you've essentially saved yourself, I believe, what is that, 77 points to use towards warriors?
I mean, how many points is Goroth? He's like 80?
Yeah. 80.
And is he a hero of Valor or Fortitude?
Fortitude.
Okay, so if you were to drop into either Mouth of Sauron, if you wanted some magic, then you could drop into Mouth of Sauron. That would give you 100 points to basically fill up with like 15 more orcs. Or you could drop to Goroth and do the same, although you probably can't fill up.
Well, are you okay? Well, actually, you know what? Goroth, actually, when you think about it, not in terms of being broken, but in terms of actually losing victory points because he can't really be killed that easily because of the special rule, it's actually a pretty genius idea to have him as your general. Just because anytime he takes a wound, 2+, sacrifice the guy, he's alive.
The only problem you'll have at this point is you drop him down to Goroth and all that. You won't have a hero that can actually kill any heroes.
And that's true.
No. So at that
but that's what the siege bows are gonna do, Devin. You can general, you can take him out. There's no heroes for you to worry about anymore.
I just want to say
Goroth is great at killing troops.
Avery, I thought the whole trip. I tried in that Barad-dûr episode. I tried to say, hey, these might have a use, and then Mick had to go use all of his math nonsense and prove me wrong. And I don't like this.
I mean, it's not like it. When it works, it's gonna work. Like when you actually have the 3 siege bows set up and you hit these lines just right, you'll be knocking stuff down. It'll slow the army down in general. I mean, when it works, it'll be fun. But
Also, this is actually one of those lists where you might, let's say, game 1 of like a large tournament, end up playing against someone who's like a favorite to win, like the J. Clare or the Ed Ball type person, and just randomly roll really well and just like completely destroy them. And then you might end up losing the next 6 rounds.
He'll fight a Rivendell Knight list and get all hits, and he'll just start blowing them all off the horse. Like everyone. He'll just be winning games left and right. I mean, Avery, that's my advice anyway. Just bulk out the list. Goroth is not a bad shout, but just you'll probably need other things, maybe a Wraith, maybe the Mouth Siren, whatever that can.
Are you guys more on, like, how he has the 8 Black Numenorians, the 8 Moranin, and like the 9 Moranins basically? Would you rather that be downgraded to just all regular?
Oh yeah, I was saying strip it down to
completely get rid of that. Okay.
Well, if he just bulks on numbers and makes an absolute horde, he might find himself getting 3 solid heroes. And I have to do the math on this, but if he does it right, he'll have 3. So he'll have Guritz, Kardish, Goroth, and something else, or like the Mouth and something else. But then all his troops break down. He'll have like 60 models plus 4 heroes and 3 siege bows. At that point, he's winning. He's trying to win battles through attrition, just through weight of. Because I mean, the thing is, it's a dice game, and your opponent will eventually roll badly. If you fight elite heavy armies and you fight them 1-on-1 like elves, like you have 65 models and they have 39, they're gonna break down because they're just gonna start losing fights. As long as you can actually wound them. So with your orcs, I'd probably arm them all with axes or picks. So because they have to break through that defense 6.
All right.
But,
so if I can break back in,
what do you guys? Yep.
All right. So I've looked at the FAQs, and so the answer. So I originally went delving into this to figure out if you could scatter the shot onto somebody who is not in line of sight of the siege engine, and the answer is maybe. The rule was not as I remembered it. There is an FAQ thing here that says, if a shot from a siege engine scatters, can you scatter onto a model that is out of its maximum range or one that is out of line of sight? This is in the FAQ to the rule book, by the way. And the answer is yes. However, if the model is out of line of sight, then it can only be scattered onto if the siege engine has the volley fire special rule. So it seems like you can't scatter onto somebody who's out of line of sight. However, there's another FAQ a little earlier that says, when firing a siege engine, do I draw line of sight from the crew or from the siege engine itself? And the answer is from any member of the crew. A siege engine doesn't have eyes after all. Note that when determining in the ways, the shot will come from the siege engine and not the crew. So the question is, what do you do if you have somebody who's in line of sight of a member of the crew, but is completely blocked from the actual siege engine? Do you treat that thing as just another obstruction?
You call a referee.
Yeah, I think that's right. So who knows what the answer to that question is? It is kind of an odd case. So there's another explanation of how ballistae are supposed to work and this is in the Armies of the Lord of the Rings book FAQ. And this says, how exactly do dwarf ballistae work when they target a battlefield target? And it takes you through a bunch of steps, all of which I assume there's nothing here that's particular to the dwarf ballistae, because the dwarf ballistae works the same way as, say, the Uruk-hai siege ballista or the siege bow. So you roll to hit and scatter as normal. If a scatter hits a combat, roll to see which model in the combat is hit the same way as a shooting attack. Then you make in the ways. So it seems pretty clear from this that one thing you can do is you can scatter this onto a target that has like 6 enemy models between you and the siege weapon, and then the siege weapon has to try and get through all of them in order to hit. So scattering onto a target that is obscured by your opponent's models is still a perfectly viable strategy.
So I would say in that case, if you were, let's say your orcs were seeing something. No, if your orcs were not able to see, but your siege bow could hit it, then you can't scatter onto it. But if your orcs could see it, but your siege bow can't draw a line, then you can scatter onto it. But the line goes through walls and other things.
Well, so it depends which. So if your orcs can't see it, but the siege bow can, you can't shoot because you have no line of sight.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the answer to the first question. The answer to the second question, which is orcs can see, siege bow can't. That's the question where we don't know.
Well, I would then just say, well, the line of the shot is from the siege bow, so that's your line. But the vision comes from a different place.
I think I'd rule that the shot would be blocked. Like it's just that's
right. But the question then becomes, can you scatter onto that guy in the first place?
If you can see him, yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess so, because you've seen the target. I suppose there's an order of operations I'd have to read. I'm not sure how often this will come up in a game, but actually, this is all
right.
Well, with this list, it will come up often.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Also, I should mention, just while I have it on my mind, Avery, keep in mind when you listen to our Barad-dûr episode, there's one big factor about Barad-dûr that is not present in this list, and that is you can't break. So if you saw like our list being really small in numbers, because I just thought of that, like if you saw like, oh, well, you had 36 models and 700 points. Well, yeah, but like I wouldn't be worried about what your model count is at that point, you know? So at that point, your whole army is just there to supplement Sauron.
Yeah, there's also Sauron in it.
It does also have Sauron, but he might think of like, oh, well, the Witch King and all the Morannons and stuff could substitute as Sauron. Just kind of the equivalent hitting power, but you still break. Whereas in Sauron's army, you don't. So the numbers don't matter anymore. The model count doesn't. So I think at this point, I mean,
But
go ahead.
wait.
There's more.
Yeah. So
It's not an
so,
FAQ.
all right. So, well, yeah, well, yes. So this is a different issue. It does relate to the siege bows, and it's one that has kind of given me a question mark before, and then they tried to clarify it, and then they unclarified it. So anyway, I want to get your guys' take on this. So one of these steps in the FAQ for the Dwarf Ballistae is once you have worked out which model is hit, they suffer a Strength 9 hit. If the hit model was in a fight, then all models in the fight will also suffer a Strength 9 hit and be knocked prone if they have a Strength of 5 or lower. Does that mean they are also auto-killed, which is usually what happens if you
because they all become the target?
Yeah.
No, I think there was an FAQ regarding that because that was brought up a lot. Because they all become the target, then therefore they should all be auto-killed.
So this is the FAQ you were talking about. If the siege engine hits a combat, will every model in the combat count as being hit by the initial shot, or will only the model that is hit directly count as being hit by the initial shot? Answer, only the model that is directly hit.
Yeah.
But wait a minute, the initial shot is what gives the Strength 9 hit, which this other FAQ said everybody takes.
Yeah, but also the initial shot means that you also get to get flung away. And so if you were to apply the initial shot thing, then the whole combat would
the whole group would fly away.
Flying away in different directions too.
Yeah. They're not so that FAQ, I remember bringing this up because we had it come up in our local store, and that FAQ was written, I believe, as a result, because we submitted it as a question, and essentially that's how I interpret it, is that only the initial. They
don't fly away, because if you go to the next bullet on this Dwarf Ballistae checklist of things to do, the next bullet says if the model that was hit has a Strength 5 or lower, then they are flung away. So that's not the issue. I guess where we're coming out on this is that everybody in the combat takes a Strength 9 hit, but only the target that was hit actually dies.
I think the Strength 9 hit is a separate effect being applied, but it doesn't change the original target. It's just, if you happen to hit, it just happens to be the same number, which is 9, but I don't think they don't all become the original target all of a sudden.
So this is actually where
what a mess.
Yeah, this is actually where things like, let's say, the Great Beast of Gorgoroth gets slightly confusing. In that, let's say you have a siege bow and your Great Beast is surrounded by 15 models. You fire a siege bow into that combat. You hit one of those models, then all of them get the Strength 9 hit. But then I always wondered, does the beast itself then get a Strength 9 hit and die if this is like the initial target sort of?
No, because the initial target would be one of the guys surrounding him.
Yeah.
So therefore, he would take a Strength 9 hit, but wouldn't die from it.
Yeah. So this is actually
actually you should fire all your siege bows into a Great Beast.
well, no, because if the Great Beast is in combat with somebody, the first thing you're going to do, according to this chart, is you roll once you have worked out. Let's see.
By the way, viewers, if you thought you were going to hear 5 lists today, you were wrong.
You roll to see which model in the combat is hit in the same way as a shooting attack. So first you roll good or evil, right? Yes. So if you rolled evil, the Great Beast itself is hit and it dies.
It dies, yeah. But if
you rolled good, though, then that good guy is the one that dies, and the Great Beast, according to what we just said, and then the Great Beast takes a Strength 9 hit, but if that is a wound, he doesn't die. He just takes one wound.
But then if the Great Beast is then surrounded by, let's say, 10 models, all of those models get a Strength 9 hit, but they don't automatically die.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The other models don't die either,
Because I was also thinking here, in this specific army, there is potentially a situation where you could do with a Great Beast instead of the Witch King. But just
the thing is, don't actually you don't want to fire them into the Great Beast combat, because if you scatter onto them, you just wipe your Great Beast out. So, I mean, I wouldn't actually recommend this.
So if we want to stick to, because I know that he had mentioned that he wanted to try and keep the Witch King in his list? I know we had talked about, Goroth kind of.
Okay.
If we wanted to keep the Witch King in the list, what do you recommend for him?
Probably you'd have to bring him down from the Fell Beast. You probably could just downgrade the troops in his warband and get a lot of numbers anyway, but you're not going to get nearly as many. From there, you could downgrade the Witch King to on horse. He's actually pretty effective on horse, and you're not going to be as tempted to throw him into combat, which means all 12 will is devoted towards spell casting, which is then plenty. So Mick earlier said add more will, add more fate because he's going to be in combat. Well, now he's not going to be. Well, I mean, unless the model's transfixed or something. So at that point, you can keep the Witch King. I just think on Fell Beast might be a bit excessive when your numbers are too low. Yeah.
Plus, there was one more final thing as well, which was we didn't talk about this. There are 4 Warg Riders with shield and throwing spears. Are you guys happy with the number of Cav? And then do you keep
probably one too many, to be honest? And I would get rid of the throwing spears personally. I don't think they're necessary.
Yeah,
I think
do
the
like another Warg.
Yeah, that's well, they're 1 point apiece on these guys. They're slightly discounted. But it is almost another Warg. I do think he could get rid of him without any issue, though.
Yeah, because he could just rely on the shooting from the 3 siege bows. Oh, wait.
Okay,
so this list reminds me of a joke.
I think go ahead.
Well, you've got somebody who's like a worker in the store, and he turns to his boss and he says, "Boss, we're selling these widgets at $9 each, but it costs us $10 to purchase them. How are we ever going to make money?" The boss's response is, "Volume. We're going to make money with volume." And that's the problem with this list.
So, you know what, Avery? I appreciate that you are trying to make something that I hope becomes meta work, even though it won't ever become meta unless something changes in the rules. But please,
the next tournament winner.
Yeah. please let us know if you do ever take this to a tournament or just play against a friend with it. I'd love to hear how the siege bows do along with the list, if you take any of our thoughts into consideration with changing the list, and let us know how that does. We're going to move on to the second list for today, which is a Lothlorien list. So I will move that over to Matt.
All right. So this is a list from Mike Patrick. And this is a Lothlorien list green ally with Rivendell. It's an 800-point list. And in Warband 1, he has Celeborn with armor, sword, and shield. A Gladrim standard bearer. It does not say if the Gladrim standard bearer is armed with anything. 6 Gladrim with sword and shield, 4 Gladrim with bow and spear, and 3 Gladrim court guard. Warband number 2 is Haldir with heavy armor and bow, 5 Gladrim with sword and shield, 4 Gladrim with bow and spear, and 3 Gladrim court guard. Warband number 3 is Gildoran Glorian, interestingly enough, with 3 Noldor exiles with bow. I'm going to pause here because I'm not sure if this is legal. Couldn't you only have at most 1 Noldor exile with bow?
Yeah, because the bow limit splits across the different factions. Yeah, so
right. So Mike, what we're talking about here is you need to have 1/3 of your Lothlorien guys, no more than 1/3 of your Lothlorien guys armed with bow, and no more than 1/3 of your Rivendell guys armed with bows. So the most you could have,
throwing daggers.
You could give them throwing dagger. Well, so we'll talk about some options with Warband number 3 in a second, but that's an identified issue. Warband number 4 is Orifim, or Orifin, who's a Gladrim captain on a horse with sword and shield, and he has 3 Gladrim knights with shield. It comes out at 800 points, 36 models, which is a little light for 800 points, but that can often happen with Lothlorien. 11 bows plus Haldir. The goal is a come and get me with 2 bigger phalanxes and 2 static flanking forces that can move fast for hit and run or objective capturing. Gildor is kind of squishy, no kidding, but is intended to move and distract and maybe immobilize a wandering hero or small band. Knights are for the same purpose, but mostly to move, distract, and possibly capture. Okay, so
you missed the part where he said he watches the Lord of the Rings podcast over 10 times, no joke. That's a true fan. Love this guy already.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And he also notes that Haldir can be exchanged for Rumil without a hitch. Let me just go through some quick thoughts before I turn over the floor. First is you've got 6 Galadrim Court Guard here. I would suggest putting 4 Galadrim Court Guard in one warband and 2 in the other, just So that way, if you want to, instead of putting one Galadrim Court guard behind a Galadrim with sword and shield, you can put two in certain places if necessary. Because remember, they do have pikes, so you can stack those particular guys too deep. I would, unless you have done it and have just not recorded it on the sheet, I would definitely give both a shield and a spear to the Galadrim standard bearer. You can figure out where to get 2 points to do this. And then we have the Gildor and Glorian issue. You could change 2 bows to throwing daggers. They cost the same. And so I think that I'm fine with this list, but for the Gildor and Glorian. And I guess there's 3 options here. One is you could keep Gildor and Glorian and you just change 2 bows to throwing weapons. And then you have a bunch of kind of squishy 8-inch moving guys that can run around and hide behind terrain. The problem is once you drop 2 guys, Gildor and Glorian doesn't have a bow. Once you drop 2 Noldor exiles to not having bows, their ability to actually influence the battlefield from distance decreases significantly. So option 2 would be to change Haldir and Warband 2 to Rumiel. As you note, they can be swapped out. Then change Gildor and Glorian to Haldir with an elven cloak and a bow. I think you'd have to find 5 points somewhere. 3 points would be from changing those Noldor exiles to just ordinary wood elves with bows. And I think that you could do because then everybody's Lothlorien. I think you have enough bow slots to do that. And so that saves you 3 points. You need to find 2 points somewhere else to do that. And then you have kind of the same harassment warband. You lose the magic. You're getting an extra shot out of Haldir with the extra expert shot. You lose the 8-inch move. But it's not clear to me that that's key. But then you do have this kind of small little warband of guys with elven cloaks and bows that can go and hide inside a terrain piece and just shoot at it and harass and make people come and dig them out, or get, sit on an objective in woods and just shoot out of it. The other thing you could do with Warband 3 is you could just delete it entirely. I think that gives you 103 points that you could then spend to fill out Orofin's Warband with more guys. And maybe you throw a second banner in there. That might be a useful thing to have in an all-elf list. Maybe you just kind of bulk it out. So he's got maybe 4 knights and 8 guys on foot with another phalanx. But that's my option number 3.
All right. So, all right. I'm glad Mike never said he really was wanting Gildor. I'm not seeing a place where I guess it was just part of a flanking force. Honestly, I agree with Matt. Just delete Gildor's warband, and if you really, really want that flanking force, that double flanking force, then just add a few more cav. I by the way, for the record, I don't suggest having 5 cav or 6 cav, but if that's what your goal is, then you can double flank with them and such. I do understand the desire, though, to have a second immobilize, because does Celeborn have immobilize?
Yep.
Yes.
So you have that second immobilize to really make sure a hero goes down. So that's something that I can imagine you really want in the list, especially when you have, it seems like he's pretty well equipped to deal with heroes. He's got Haldir with strike, Celeborn with strike, Orphan really the only one who can't.
But he's fight 6 on a horse, so he could if he wanted to.
Yeah, he could. And we call him Orphan, but obviously it's Gladstone Captain.
He's got a name.
So realistically, the desire to have a 4th hero, I can also really understand. I suppose if I were to swap out Gildor, which is a random 3rd hero, I'm kind of wondering if you should stick it full Lothlorien and skip this double flank idea. Because to be honest, that Noldor exile flank is going to fold like in a turn. it's going down pretty fast.
Well, unless it's
3
in like a
models.
building or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think,
it's not exactly much of a flank force when it's hiding inside a building.
Yeah.
well, you anchor your flank on a building. I mean, if there was a terrain piece on which you could anchor a flank, like a building or woods or something like that, then I think this is a viable way to do it. I mean, there is something to be said in this list for having a couple guys with elven cloaks that do nothing but stand on an objective and shoot out a 3+ shot every turn.
Sorry. So I'm wondering, because he's saying here about how Gildor is like the second immobilize a wandering hero or a small band, and I'm just thinking, okay, well, obviously, Gildor himself is not that great, and this Noldor Exiles thing, we're all thinking about getting rid of it. But I was just looking at the one of the models which nobody really likes in Lothlorien lists, which is a Galadrim Stormcaller. And so if you really want to have like a second sort of effective immobilize, then the Cold Winds is not such a bad idea, I think. You don't really have to like get any more models within the Zorban. In fact, he's 10 points cheaper. And if you were to really go for something where you just want to be double immobilizing somebody, then going immobilize and then knock down, or try to knock down and then immobilize, might also kind of give you this similar sort of effect.
Actually, kind of interesting thought. It's like one of the worst models in the game.
Yeah.
We're actually like,
But so is Gildor and Glorian. So it'd be a step up.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking like
it would save him 20 points.
Exactly. Yeah, but like since like the Stormcaller is just so bad because it's a minor hero, but in this case, you're only bringing 3 models in this Warban anyway, so you don't really care. The effect is kind of the same, or potentially even better, because it's a knockdown, and you can just randomly get rid of some hero and just put him away for like a turn or two.
Or the banner, that could be another.
Or a banner, yeah. And then the other spell is Enchanted Blades, which actually works with Celeborn too.
Yes. And Enchanted Blades on Celeborn is disgusting.
The only issue, I guess, is the Stormcaller doesn't have the Elven Cloak, so he can't kind of lurk the same way Gildor does.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's focusing on the Stormcaller, then you're doing everything right.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know. I still think the idea of finding 5 points somewhere, turning Gildor into Haldir, and turn Haldir into Rumiel in the middle of Warband 2 is probably a better. If you want to keep 4 heroes, is probably the better way to go.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, I'm just thinking like, if you really want to have this second immobilized, then I think Stormcaller might be better. But I think ultimately, I don't think you want it.
The only thing is you lose the fight 6, so you lose the 2 attacks. So Gildor is, and what does he have? Heroic March?
He does have March, yeah.
Yeah.
So Gildor,
but he's got a captain, so
he does have a captain. So the March is irrelevant, but the 2 attacks, he keeps the point of might, which is okay, fair.
Well, he has defense as well. So, like, if he gets into a situation where he feels like he's going to die, he can just basically waste a turn. Because he is still fight 6 at strength 4 with 2 attacks.
Which, honestly, in his case, I think I would use his might only for heroic defense.
Yeah, I think I would save it for
unless that captain is a pure combat role.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, I guess there's some merits both ways. I can see the shout out for Call Wins, because actually one thing I do like about it is, it will at least knock you down and then they kind of have to bunch people behind their guy so he doesn't blow away.
Also, if let's say your opponent's playing some sort of Fell Beast or something, then
that's going to be a very threatening model. Then
that's the most annoying.
I mean, it's like, well,
even
if
you're
not doing anything
for
the whole game, and then you just
a mounted model, like
On the other hand, remember this is a 103-point warband, and there are slots in this army if you make Warband 3 go away to fill those up.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's still a viable option.
I mean, but you could turn this into a 46 model army. of elves, and
True.
I think that's a viable way to go.
Probably better.
Yeah,
I mean,
that probably actually would work better than a fourth hero, to be honest.
Like I said in the Galadrim, I play this list a lot. I play against this list a lot, and so my number one recommendation would be what Matt said, and I think you always want to maximize as many elf warriors as you can, because when you kind of get a horde at fight 5, defense 6, it becomes at a point where you go, my heroes almost all have heroic defense. So for example, if you wanted, if you went into a 3 hero situation, I would actually go with Rumil over Haldir, because the heroic defense in this list is the exact same as a heroic strike, because at the end of the day, they strike, you call defense, they need natural 6 to wound you, and if you win the fight, then you're hitting them anyway. And the ability to make people re-roll dice is huge. So if you go to 3 heroes, I would recommend Rumil over Haldir. If you want to stick with 4 heroes, then I wanted to get you guys' opinion on this. If you kept Gildor in this list, I would actually get rid of the Galadrim Knights completely. And the reason I'd say that is because if you made the Noldor Exiles with Gildor's warband, then you kind of get that, not super fast, of course, but you get a bunch of movement 8 guys. So you still kind of get that movement feature. And obviously they're only defense 3, which is a little bit, but you also increase your bow limit a little bit. So if you wanted that 4 hero kind of bunch, then you can add more numbers to this list. Maybe make it like 39, 40 if you get enough points from because the knights are 19 points apiece. So you can get like anywhere from probably 4 to 6 more models for the Noldor Exiles added into this. And so you have a movement of 8, group of 8, and then you'd also have, let's say you had Haldir with Celeborn with a Galadrim captain on horse, and then you had Gildor. So you have 2 magic users, you have a little bit of movement from your wood elves, you have more bows, you have 3, to be fair, 3 decent, actually Gildor can do a little bit of damage himself against regular troops. So you kind of have this 4 hero good might source kind of situation where you have 9 might, you have a couple hitting heroes, you have a bunch of Galadrim Court Guard to support if you need extra attacks. You have the movement from the. I just think that if you want to stick with Gildor in the list, I think I'd rather use the points from the Galadrim Knights towards the Noldor Exiles upgraded to have more movement from Wood Elves and get the numbers up a little bit. But I always think personally with Galadrim to do as many, shield and spear as possible.
Yeah,
I kind of rate the Galadrim Knights over the Exiles personally.
I kind of would too, just because it's nice to have guys that can knock other guys down. But yeah, it's a way to go. I mean, you do get more of them. You can probably get more traps by running around the outside.
I feel like if your goal is to get more troops, deleting Gildor's warband is probably a better option.
Yeah, and I still think I think Galadrim is always, and unless they do something different, will always be a 3 warband optimized list where you can't really get more than 3 heroes into the list.
Well, I mean, Mick just came up with a cool Stormcaller.
Yeah, Stormcaller.
Well,
and the Stormcaller can definitely add that kind of, but whenever I play any, regardless of if it's the one specific person I play or if I played someone in a tournament, I always just feel like if they had more elves, I would be really much more scared of that.
Same, yeah. That's always a big worry. Like if there's 50 elves out there and you only have like 40 orcs.
Exactly.
Yeah, you just looking at the game and like, okay, how the hell am I?
Exactly.
This is a problem. Yeah.
If they can do the thing that they're not supposed to do, which is horde on defense 6, fight 5, courage 5 models,
definitely.
What do you do there?
Yeah, with some of them have Galadrim Court Guards, so they're actually 6 models behind them. Yeah. Well, let me ask a meta question on this, because he does say the goal here is a come and get me army. Is it possible in today's meta to do a come and get me army without blinding light? Because he does not have that here, because Galadriel.
I would say without Galadriel, no.
I think he's a middle of the road shooting army right now. Because what do you got? 10 shots. Because
11 plus Haldir.
11
well, no, but it would go down because of the Noldor Exile.
No, but we're counting that, right? Like, because he's got Galadrim, he's got 8 bows on the Galadrim. Then Haldir, that's 10 shots. And then he's got an 11th one because of the Noldor. So we're counting that. So it's 11. So, I mean, with 11 without blinding light, he's only out shooting those who didn't have that much bow fire anyway. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of any other list that like would just be able to shoot back, and I mean, unless your list is like if you're playing Minas Tirith and you have for some reason like I don't know 6
Citadel
Rangers
Guard.
of Gondor or something, or Citadel Guard, then yeah, you're getting outshot by this list. But then in that case, you probably are getting outshot most times anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, you think about it like this, right? So a Harad list will probably have double the amount of bows.
Oh, I think Harad would outshoot this army.
Well, so this is the interesting thing. So they shoot on a 4, so they hit half of them. So they'd hit 12, let's say on average, and they'd only wound on 6s, so they're doing 2 wounds. Whereas if you took
they're re-rolling the remaining 10.
Re-rolling the ones, but that might only do 1 extra
another
wound.
one. So like so you might be getting like
2 or 3,
2.5 ish, like 2 and a third, yeah.
But if the elves shot back at you, they're probably going to be doing 2 or 3. But yeah, because they
but there's about 30 models.
Yeah, that's
Harad,
true.
so.
Harad would win that. You're right. That's my bad.
Yeah, because when you factor in who can outshoot who, there's not just defense but numbers. Who can handle more losses?
Mm-hmm.
And Harad theoretically at 800, if not spending too much points on heroes, it can handle the losses.
Actually, you know what? If you had like a horde Gondor list and you decided to go with Citadel Guard at bows, I mean they're defense 5, they have strength 3 bows. They could probably outshoot them as well. So I mean there are things that even without blinding light will outshoot this. So I agree with Devin where I think it's kind of like maybe above.
Well, Matt raised the point that.
Oh, Matt.
Well, he raised the point of you can't outshoot without blinding light. I said that you're kind of a middle of the road.
Yeah, I think it's slightly above middle of the road for without blinding light.
I guess the larger meta question is, in today's meta and the way the rules are structured now, is it possible to have a competitive list that A, does not have blinding light, and B, is not the Rangers of the Ithilien, Legendary Legion, the Harad shooty list, Corsairs, or something with a bunch of siege weapons?
So if you're not one of the shooty armies in the game, is it possible to be a shooty army?
Yeah, is it possible to be competitive unless you're A, a really shooty army, or B, a non-shooty army with blinding light? That's
the question. Interesting.
Which we don't need to answer today. I just want to throw it out there and have people think about it.
Yeah, but this is a good question. I'll ask you 3. Would you take
there's
list?
There's lots of armies that have won without any shooting at all.
What is an army that you guys would take to a tournament that wouldn't?
I mean, geez, there's like 39 factions, and I feel like half of them are not even shooting armies. Like you can easily.
Yeah, but has somebody won in the current meta where Rangers are now a thing without blinding light in that list that doesn't shoot?
Yeah, I mean, I can name. So it depends on what kind of tournaments we're going to name, but if we're going to think of competitive ones and only ones that I've seen, Mick, you may know some of them, but I know like in the GBHL, because keep in mind we've only had like 1 year of tournaments, so it's not like there's been we haven't even had an Articon with the current meta yet.
9 months of a pandemic also.
Yeah, so we haven't had that much game time. But
I'm not saying there's data available to answer this question, but it's just a trend I have noted in a list that we have.
Jay Clare just got he got second technically, but. No, didn't he win with a Dunlending force? He won with the Dunlending, or no, he got second. Yeah, in the Warhammer World GT, he was playing a Dunlending, and he was playing the Legion from Helm's Deep, but that's a shooty list. So, but that doesn't have blinding light in it, but it is a shooty list.
It is a shooty list. Yeah. I mean, I would include in the shooty list like the Assault on Helm's Deep list, the Defenders.
I mean, but Jay won with the Dunlending Legion.
Are we including Goblin in this mix? Because I mean that's like an obvious like no shooting, no blinding light kind of list where it's just.
I mean, I feel like
Because I know we talk about Goblin Town all the time, but does that not solve the answer of is there an army where?
Yeah, so maybe that does. You just have so many guys that you can't.
So maybe Horde is the
them all.
option.
Well,
You-
I
no,
don't.
you really
I'm
don't
not.
care.
I mean, Goblin Town is more going for it than that. Otherwise, Ruffians would be a tournament list, every time. But
Yeah, but Ruffians can't support, so that's the difference, though. Like
well,
when you
King
can
Well,
Sword
match
doesn't have
someone.
the Goblin King. Doesn't
Ruffians
have
don't have any
Golems.
heroes.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
Have,
Yeah.
Well, they do. They have
Well, they
7
do, but
really
like-
shit
but-
ones.
but
Yeah, no, I mean,
Don't you put disrespect on
the answer is
Sharky.
not. The answer is not just you have so many guys that they can't all be shot down. You do actually have to have a list underneath all those guys
Yeah.
that can win,
Yeah,
which Goblin Town does and the Ruffians don't.
yeah.
But so I guess Goblin Town is kind of one answer to that. But I mean, Goblin Town, I think, as we've discussed, is kind of a broke list on a different level.
Mhm.
I haven't Rivendell
So I'm not
Knights done
sure
well down.
that
Well, it's
answers
a
my
shooty
question.
list. I mean, honestly, like we this is definitely going to go into a topic way away from this Rivendell list, but
Yeah.
so I guess, like Matt said, this is probably a subject unto its own. But I suppose for this Galadrim list, we gave him quite a few options.
Mhm.
I've got
which-
two more ideas for this list.
Oh,
but very
alright.
very short ones.
You're definitely not getting the 5 lists.
We'll be fine. We got a whole hour to do 3 lists. We're doing good.
I mean, so if you really wanted the Blinding Light and you didn't want Galadriel and you wanted to keep Gildor, then Círdan costs the same as your Galadriel captain. And being a minor hero with Gildor, you can include him. So that's one option. And the other thing was, if you were to delete Warband 3, then get rid of the captain and put the knights into another warband, you can have a Glorfindel or someone like that. So that then gives you another big hero. So just thought I'd throw it in there just in case.
Mhm.
But I think the main concern of all of us, did it sound like we were saying you need more elves? Is
Yeah.
that-
It is. But
So more
but in
elves at
case,
800.
yeah, in
Okay.
case you choose not to have more elves, then
Yeah.
these are the other
Yeah.
options.
Then you can
So-
either take a Stormcaller, Glorfindel, or
Yes.
yeah.
so just have more elves.
Yeah,
Probably-
just-
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, you could do the Stormcaller. Right? 36 models would have been fine if it wasn't 800 points.
I mean, I think I've
lot.
made a list for Galadrim where I think I had almost 48, 49 elves, and it was 800 points. So it's just one of those things where if you take at 800 points almost 50 elves, a lot of people are going to look at that and go, all right, so he's got Celeborn who can heroic defense. He's got a great leader profile. You've got either Haldir or Rumil who can, either fight or call heroic strikes and then add shots or whatever that may be. And then let's say you add a Galadrim captain on sword and shield kind of situation on a horse. Well, then you've got another hitting power plus you have march. And then you kind of get that concept of like, it can kind of do everything that you need it to do. Or if you wanted to add Galadriel to this kind of a thing where, maybe you lower your numbers a little bit, but you get magic plus you get protection from shooting.
I think he purposely did not want Galadriel.
Yeah,
It's
so
obvious
and that's fine. You
Galadriel
can
should
do
be
that with
here.
this list because it's all defense 6, and you have really good shooting. So it'll still do well, and then you also get the high numbers. But I think that's the main point is to get as many elves in as you can, to make it as hard as possible for most armies to fight against. But Mike, let us know what you end up doing with this list, if you take any of our thoughts into consideration. And I know you mentioned at the bottom you're hoping to do well with it at an upcoming 800-point random match play scenario tourney. So let us know how you do with the list if you take that, and hopefully you'll win with it with our suggestions. We're going to move over to a couple list reviews from the last episode. So we're going to go over a 650-point Easterling list, a 800-point Easterling list, and then I will do a 800-point mixed Khand and Easterling list. So I'll do the 650-point Easterling list first. So Matt, if you want to do that.
Sure. Okay. So this is a 650-point Easterling list, and we wanted to get into these just so listeners would have a sense of how the figures that we talked about last time might actually be used, since we kind of discussed tactics a bit, but not any list organizations. So at 650 points, the first warband in this list is Kamuli Easterling on Fellbeast. and he comes with all of his bells and whistles. In his warband is an Easterling warrior with pike, heavy armor, banner, and shield. And you want this banner around to give, as we discussed, Kamul an extra die in the fight because he only gets 2. He's not the Witch King. There are also 4 Easterling warriors with heavy armor and shield. There are 5 Easterling warriors with pike, heavy armor, and shield, and then 4 black dragon warriors with pike, heavy armor, and shield, and then 1 black dragon cataphract who also has a drum. So this is going to get you a nice 4 or possibly 5 wide phalanx of Easterlings with black dragons in the back rank. Kamul to flap around and kill heroes and take stuff out. And also the black dragon cataphract with the drum so that this phalanx can move 9 inches. And Kamul, if you need him to, can go up to 17 inches, perhaps to compel then somebody into him and from 20 inches away. Warband number 2 is Andor, Lord of Blades, and he comes on his horse. And with him are 4 Easterling warriors with pike, 4 Easterling warriors with shield, and 3 black dragon pikemen with shield. So he gets another slightly smaller warband. No banner here because Amdur himself is a banner. And then with that are 3 black dragon cataphracts. And that's the mountain contingent that's going to ride around with Amdur. They can all bunch up together, so they increase their defense to strength 7 and strength 6 for their horses. So the idea here is when this army deploys, all other things being equal, there will be, these 2 pike phalanxes will sit next to each other so that you've got basically a 9-figure wide, 3 deep pike phalanx across the board. And either terrain's going to be on one side or Kamul's going to be on one side, and Amdur and his cavalry contingent are going to be on the other side. And Amdur and Kamul are the hammers, and the phalanxes are the anvil that sits in the middle. And hopefully this whole thing can move around at least 9 inches a turn, get to some place where it can secure its flanks with terrain and take on a portion of the enemy army and defeat it before the rest of the enemy army can run up and surround it. The downside of this list is it's only got 5 might. The only might that it has are in the 2 heroes, so it's going to be using its drum to move quickly, and hopefully can get by minimizing the number of heroic moves that it needs to call, because it can just sit there as a phalanx and say, yeah, you charge me, and then you wait and you commit Kamul, and then once Kamul commits, then you can do a couple of quick heroic moves to take out the enemy heroes. That's the army.
So I know you mentioned this, but just to recap, how many models did you say the entire army had?
It has 31 models. So it is like 1 figure below what you would expect average to be on this. At 650, you'd expect 32 or 33 models.
And Amdur, Kamul.
Amdur and Kamul.
So there's 2 heroes in your list.
Yep, there's the 2 heavy hitting heroes. So I've run different variants of Easterlings at this low level, and the problem that I end up with is if I have 1 heavy hitting hero and then like 1 or 2 smaller guys, the 1 or 2 smaller guys just aren't scary enough, and all the enemy's resources get focused on the 1 hitting hero, and he ends up being shut down. And then, kind of once the 1 heavy hitting hero is shut down, you aren't doing a lot of killing. I've really found that you need the 2 heavy hitting heroes, so that if resources are focused on one, then the other can do the killing.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And the other thing is, if you actually look at points of things like captains or dragon knights or war priests, taking, let's say, a captain and a dragon knight is the same points as something like Amdur. So essentially, you're not really able to get any higher model count. Like, you may be able to get away with like a couple of more models or something like that, but ultimately the sacrifice of the two smaller heroes, well, the sacrifice of Amdur into the two smaller heroes is just not worth the change.
I think if you're taking the two smaller heroes, you're trying to get March for some
Yeah.
reason, but then you have a drum. So
Well,
Yeah.
or just more might. I mean, that's the
or
one.
more my
That's the one advantage of taking two smaller heroes. If you take it in place of Kamul, you can get 4 might instead of 2 might.
Sure.
But
so 2. You mean 3?
well, Kamul's only got 2.
Oh, Kamul instead of Kamul. Sorry.
Yeah.
Right.
But you lose magic and you lose flying monster, and I mean, I think the stuff that you lose in order to get that 2 extra might is not worth the 2 extra might.
I think ultimately in these Easterling lists, if you go impure, you kind of have to aim to have both of these big guys.
Yeah.
Otherwise there isn't that much
There's
choice.
no real, I mean, Easterlings function on these 2, and that's it.
Yeah.
Unless you ally around.
I mean, the one issue as well, usually with Easterlings, is the lack of might sometimes with this
Mhm.
list. So most of the time you'll have, for example, a captain. Let's say at higher points, you'll have a captain, Iamdur, and Kamul. And so, 7 might isn't that great. And even at 800 points, you're probably sticking to a 7 might because you want to increase your troops. So, I mean, that's always a big issue. But with Amdur having the ability of to get might back if he kills heroes, I mean, that's a huge thing for him as well. So
Mhm.
if you pair him with Kamul, not only are you taking out heroes, but then you're getting your might back for whatever you did to take out those heroes. And him having the ability to get a free heroic strike if someone calls a strike, and then with him with an Elven Blade, it really saves him a lot in the long run. Matt,
Yeah.
how would you? I'm always curious to hear about how people use Kamul. How much of the will would you use towards magic? Would you say?
So generally, I find I can get away with tossing 1 point of will out there on a spell a turn,
Okay.
or 1 turn. If there's one of these potentially game winning compels that you can make to like get the guy into position where you can do the hurl that's going to like knock the entire line off of their horses or knock all the key enemy heroes off their horses. You can do that once. Because Kamul generally will break even as far as if you're sending him in against ordinary warriors. He will generally break even on the will point expended for fighting versus getting the 1 will point back for doing a wound. He'll break even on that over time. So you've got your 12 points of will to spend, and you can either do that to like shoot out a 1 die transfix. And by the way, his spell casting is so crappy that
Yeah.
you really need, if you want to do a compel, you need to be throwing at least 3 will into that.
Mhm.
And hopefully 4 if it's really a critical one. So basically you could kind of do that once.
Yeah. Like you're not.
Otherwise, you're just
Very
throwing
well.
out the harassing transfix each turn on like a hero. And if you happen to get it off, then he's the guy you jump in on and you kill him that turn.
Yeah, because I think a lot of, I mean, you guys may have differing opinions. I think Kamul is probably the second best ring wraith, just because he has the ability to strike unlike any other wraith besides the Witch King, and also he kind of solves the one problem that a lot of ring wraiths have, which is, oh no, I'm running out of will. I got to be more conservative. He goes, I'm going to kill 3 people, get all 3 of my will back, and he can go to fight 6 automatically if he needs to. So I think I just in a list with Easterlings, sometimes people will consider, oh, let me take 3 captains in Amdur, and you need someone like Kamul in this list to really push someone back and just go, okay, I've got something really serious to deal with. But then the will, and then the reason I asked for the will thing is because obviously he's such a bad caster, and with him only having 12 will, he probably has to use a will point when he's in combat, and then how many will do you? So it's very interesting to always hear how people use Kamul in terms of the will points. But any other thoughts?
I mean, it's 650. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
Mick, we'll move it over to.
Thanks.
You're cancelled,
Devin was
Devin.
talking.
I was like, man, that was.
I don't.
I mean, yeah, I
No,
wasn't going to
so,
add
yep.
anything in particular, but at 650, yeah, there's not a
not
whole
much
hell
you
of a
can
lot
do.
you can do with Easterlings other than pretty much do what Matt did. Matt's list is probably one of the better ways you can do it. I mean, 5 cav, you could shrink it down and just get more infantry, but then I think you lose so much significant hitting power for the Easterlings that it's like, because you want more than just the heroes even deliver. Like, and plus they protect Amdur in a unique way.
Yeah, they protect Amdur in a unique way, and you do want enough of these guys so that Amdur and a few of them can just kind of block off a flank of that phalanx.
Yeah.
So that it can't be kind of swept around. Because you've got a pretty big phalanx block here that can get away with you can just kind of throw that thing out there and it to a certain extent you then no longer care about heroic moves. I mean, yeah, it's great to have Amdur get that extra die in combat, but the phalanx itself, as long as it's being hit frontally, doesn't really care about heroic moves, right?
Yeah.
And then that's another way to kind of save might on this army. If you're using Amdur and Kamul on the flanks where they're not necessarily going to get surrounded, and you're kind of hitting the main enemy army with that phalanx, at least for the first couple turns, you don't worry about casting heroic moves. Let them come into you, and Amdur and Kamul come in on a counterpunch. So,
All right, Mick, I know you had an 800-point variation of this, so
Well,
I'm interested.
so essentially, the 800-point variant is essentially pretty much what Matt has plus a captain and some additional Easterlings. So let me just read it out.
So realistically, there's not many ways you can make an Easterling.
Yes, oddly.
Let's
so
hope.
it's Amdur on armored horse, 4 Easterlings with shields, 4 with shields and pikes, 3 of which are upgraded to black dragons, 2 Easterlings with bows, 3 Easterlings with bows and pikes. Can you have pike and bow, by the way? I think you can, right?
You can.
Yeah.
they get a -1 on the dual roll, don't they?
Yeah, I think they become cumbersome.
I don't think. No,
there's a
because-
cumbersome rule or something.
Well,
Yeah,
Like,
I'll look that up.
I think
You
they
guys
get
keep
-1
talking.
in the duel.
Okay, well, if you can't have a pike and a bow, I'll probably just go with pikes alone because bows might not be that great. Anyway, so then there is one Cataphract who's carrying a war drum. Then Kamul, the Easterling of Felbeast, leading 4 Easterlings with shields, 4 with shields and pikes, all 4 upgraded. Then I had 2 Cataphracts, 2 Easterlings with bows, and then 3 Easterlings with bows and pikes. And one of the Easterlings with shield and spear also carries banner. And then we have...
Yep. Just before we go on, this is under the pike's rule. Due to the fact that a pike requires the use of 2 hands to use effectively, a model armed with a pike that is also equipped with a shield, bow, or crossbow suffers a -1 penalty on the dual rolls. The phalanx special rule ignores the shield for Easterlings. I don't think it ignores the bow.
No, I don't
but I
think
can
so.
double check that.
That's interesting though, because like I've seen people take crossbows with
shields.
pikes. Yeah, that's interesting though, because like you'll see people take for like Isengard like pikes with bows
You used to.
or with
You
crossbows.
used to
Yeah,
see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't get any more now.
yeah,
Well,
that's interesting.
Well, then
This
in
was
that
a new
case,
change.
in that case, I'm not just a little change to this list. There's no bows
Mick,
in
your
this
list
list. There's basically no bows in this list. Yeah, so then we have a banner in the second warband, so that's the same warband with Kamul. Same reason with that Matt was saying earlier, how we want to have a banner with Kamul whilst he's not an Easterling. Then the third warband is an Easterling captain on a horse with shield. And then we again have 4 Easterlings with shields, 4 with shields and pikes, and then I had a split of 4, 2 with bows and then 2 with bows and pikes. However, finding out this new information, let's just keep them all with just shields and pikes. So in total, you end up with about 44 models. It's essentially the same idea as the 650 list. So it's Amdur, Camul, a big phalanx, a banner, a war drum for extra movement, and another captain. Now this captain, it could be argued it could be someone else, like a war priest, but I think I would just rather go for another model who can charge into combat on a horse with an additional might point just to do some more damage, because I'm not convinced the war priest is necessarily that useful.
Should have been a dragon knight. No, I'm just kidding.
Did you have? Sorry, I was looking up the rule, but did you have any cataphracts in this list other than the guy with the drum?
Yeah, so there's 1, 2, 3. There's three cataphracts in total. One of them carries a drum, and then there's Amdur, Camul, and then captain on a horse. So there is six mounted models.
Got it. Okay. No, that sounds about right.
There's not very much to really talk about, because
well,
that's just how Easterlings are built.
I'm going to pose one last question, and then if nobody else has anything, we can move on to the mix. What is it about Easterlings that nobody takes bows, in your opinion? Because with Easterlings, you notice that they tend to get not super high, but relatively high numbers, and they are defense 5, so against other strength 2 shooting, they do well, and they can get a good amount of 1/3. But what do you think the reason why nobody ever takes bows with this army is?
Probably because of this silly pike rule. as I just found out, because I always thought to myself, why not have bows in the second rank?
Mm-hmm.
But with this pike rule, I'm like,
bows on the second rank would be a good idea, actually. If the pike rule didn't exist.
Yeah, if the pike rule didn't exist. I mean, you could always put bows in the front rank, I guess.
But then you're defense 5.
But then you're defense 5. I mean, one of the reasons you don't see bows with Easterlings is, I think if they are being properly used, they're always moving 9 inches a turn to get that positional advantage. And the bows will get left behind. And the other reason, at least for me, to not take the bows is points are just such a premium in this list that you don't have points left over just to have like 2 or 3 guys that are, objective grabbers with bows that just run over to objectives and grab it, which is not to say that that's not, a viable thing to have.
I think Tim was talking about having a third of your list being bows. Like, why not take a third like you would?
Well, okay. So the answer to that is because this is very much a close fighting and maneuvering list, and this is not a list. Even if this is not a list that's ever going to be, I'm just going to sit here and wait and try and outshoot my opponent, because the odds that you're going to outshoot an opponent with this list and then still have enough fighting power left once you come to grips are pretty low.
So, I mean, also, a shoot 4 value with a strength 2 bow, I don't think there's any army in the game that tries to spam that. Like, I can't think of any army that's just like, yep, I have 4 shoot value, strength 2 bows, and I'm going to take it everywhere.
Survivors of Lake Town.
Well, that's Harad.
Harad and Lake Town. So, I guess in those instances, they're hordes, yeah. So they're okay. So then in that case, you have Easterlings, which is kind of like a middle-sized army, then trying to do the
Survivors.
Same thing. So elves do it, but better shoot value.
Plus, they each have something else that buffs up their shooting, right? Survivors of Lake Town has Bard, so you've got this cannon amongst your strength to shoot 4 bows, and you have Percy if you're going to do it that way. And Harad has the Betrayer, who's making everybody re-roll their wounds.
Yeah.
Actually,
Easterlings have none of those things.
The other thing is, Easterling with a bow is essentially it's exactly the same thing as a warrior of Minas Tirith with a bow. And have you ever seen competitively spam of warriors of Minas Tirith with bows?
Well, I think that's different
Fair
though, because they have different options for bows. So, like, if they didn't have the Rangers or Citadel Guard,
then you just wouldn't take them.
Yeah, I just wouldn't. You wouldn't. I don't think Gondor warriors with bow are almost not, like, you sprinkle in like 2 or 3 if you must for some reason, but almost everyone's taking a Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the answer to the question is that spamming out ordinary shoot 4, strength 2, defense 5 bows is just not a winning strategy.
Unless you have a horde or some way to upgrade it.
But yeah, absent something else that gives you a benefit.
Yeah.
That's just that on its own is not a winning strategy.
I mean, even with Minas Tirith warriors, at least you can take a spear and not get -1. But with these guys, you can't.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
So we'll move on to the final list. This list is actually by Rainier. He wanted to make sure that his list was read for today, even though he couldn't be with us. And this is a mix of Khand and Easterling. So his list is a Khandish king on chariot with 8 Khand horse and 2 warriors. It is a Khandish chieftain on chariot with 8 Khandish horsemen and 1 warrior. Amdur on horse with 2 cataphracts, 8 warriors with shield, 5 warriors with pike, and one of them is upgraded to the Black Dragon. A chieftain on chariot with 4 horses. So it is 800 points. It's 42 models. It has 9 might, 23 bows, 3 chariots. The leader is the king, he says, which I'm not sure. Amder's Valor, isn't he?
Yeah.
So he would have to be the.
No, the king
No,
can be the
King,
leader.
King is
right?
Valor as well.
King's Valor as well. Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. These are green allies.
Oh,
right?
kings are
Yeah.
Valor?
Kings are also
okay.
Valor. Well,
Okay,
yeah,
so
he's talking about who can be the leader. Man.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So because he has the king as the leader,
yeah.
but that's because Easterlings don't have a hero of legend.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so the leader is is the king. He's got 22 horses, and the point he wanted to highlight is that he has a triple chariot threat. Amder's a grenade. He has a bunch of banners. He has a bunch of bows, a bunch of calves, a high model count for so many tools at 42. And he wanted me to let the viewers know that he will see them next time to talk about all this kind of stuff. So basically, 42 models at 800 points. He's got 9 might, which is pretty good. 23 bows is great. 3 chariots, and he's got 22 cavalry models. So what do you guys thought on the list?
Well, it's Rainier's list. They're usually pretty awful, aren't they?
Yeah. I'm already. I didn't even listen to it once you said
Let's just finish the episode. To be fair.
I mean, I've seen in playlists like this, so I kind of have an unfair look into this demolishing me. So yeah, how many chariots did he say he have in this too?
He's got 3.
He has got 3 chariots.
23
chariots.
bows.
It's going to outshoot most opponents.
Yeah, and I mean
22 horses too.
Yeah, and I mean the little pike phalanx that he's got here. I mean, the big problem with this list is it has nothing that can clear terrain, and that little pike phalanx can actually clear terrain. That's kind of what you can use it for, is to kind of wade into the woods slowly and just kind of clear out whatever the chariots can't get to.
He's got, let's see, 1 warrior, 3. He has 16.
16. He's got 1 Khandish warrior in front for the chariots.
Yeah, so he's got 2 warriors with the king, 1 warrior with a chieftain, and then 13 with Amdur.
For those who didn't see our Easterling episode where we broke that down, Rainier was talking about how he uses Khandish warriors in front of his chariots if he has to line up close, maybe contest champions or something. So that way, when the first turn starts, if someone goes first, they can just, they'll attack, they'll come in, they'll hit his Khandish warriors, and his chariots just run over his Khandish warriors and start going through. So it prevents him from having to call a heroic move.
Why is 1 warrior sufficient to do that? I mean, can't you just go up, hit the 1 warrior, and then wrap around and hit the chariot?
So it'll depend on how he actually does it. Because I've always when I used this similar strategy with an Iron Hills chariot, I had a line of Lake Towners. I'm assuming that what he does is he creates his line, Easterlings, and then adds the Khandish warrior where he wants his chariot to run through. So I did the same thing. I created a really bulk defensive line, but then where I knew my Iron Hills chariot was going to go through, I only put 1 Lake Towner, or just enough to where a base wouldn't fit between. So it might be 2 Lake Towners. And then you complete the line. So you just kind of thin it out a little bit.
And you keep the chariot far enough back so that hitting that Lake Towner and running around isn't enough to get the chariot.
Yeah, well, no, you basically, you would just make sure in between them that a base couldn't fit. So a 25 mil base would not be able to fit between the two models that you have. It like not like zones, like it literally can't fit. And so that's how I did it. Now that to me requires.
So you would end up having run over.
I had to run
Right,
two
okay,
over.
yeah, that's right.
Now Rainier's somehow doing one. So in Rainier's case, so I had an Iron Hills chariot that was a lot bulkier and a lot slower. So I needed to be up close to the line and get maximum results. But Rainier probably could be further back because he moves 2 inches faster and he's smaller. So that's why I had to run over 2 because I'm so big. Maybe he only has to run over 1 because realistically he only has like, he has his line, and then just one guy right here. And that's what is. So that's my assumption on that. I didn't see it happen because I was playing Corsairs and he just ran toward me. So other interesting notes about the list for those who hadn't viewed our Easterling episode was the march does work on these chariots, allows him to move 15 inches and run you over, which is pretty terrifying. So
it's a real shame the kings and chieftains can't use might on their trample.
Oh yeah,
I wish they could.
Yeah. So I
think the interesting to know is like I'm not sure exactly how many. I think they're all on horses if I'm correct, but he has 22 mounted horsemen with bow. I think if I'm correct, and I mean the ability to just move even 5 inches and shoot is just massive. And with that many bows, and he has the ultimate ability to kind of not really hold a middle ground because of the lack of foot troops, but he has if he can get a good area to control in the middle, and then he uses his cap. I mean, he has a lot of hitting power in this list.
I mean, the cavalry can't kite forever because they're anchored by the infantry that he has. He can't let them get slaughtered. So he can move and shoot 5 inches, but if I really wanted to force Rainier to commit, then I could just swing toward his infantry, in which case his cavalry will have to come back.
I think what's great though is he added the 2 cataphracts specifically so he can make Amder's horse defense 6. So he can keep that shield rule, or the I forget what the name of the exact rule is, but like the one where it boosts the defense of the horse and the person. So
it actually makes Gleaming Horde.
Gleaming Horde, that's what it is.
Yeah, the Gleaming Horde.
That boosts that boosts Amder's defense as well, correct?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, because he has Gleaming.
So he's Amder's defense 7, his horse's defense 6 now. So that's a nice little add there from Rainier. Any other final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty clever way to make, or it's a fun list. I mean, it's a fun Khand Easterling list, and in my opinion, I don't think you need necessarily all the Khandish horsemen that he had, but adding these chariots into an Easterling list is one of the, at higher points levels, is one of the few ways to actually make them work at higher levels, because now they have that serious hitting power. But that's just one thing I'll add. I think Khand effectively is like a subcategory of Easterlings. So.
Let us know in the comments section below about the lists and how you thought about them, as well as any other topics for stuff you'd like us to review in future episodes, and any lists you'd like us to review. And remember, if you do leave a list, leave a general idea of how you're going to play the list, and if you want to keep any specific things in the list so we don't diverge too far into one direction or the other. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
All right, guys.
Bye.